So let's start at the beginning, Tez, of
Right.
what we now know, or now we lovingly refer to the D beats. Tell us, for you, how did it all begin?
I remember it was the very first time I ever played with them. I went round to Howard's basement flat, and it was
Yeah.
just it was literally been thrown in at the deep end. We've got this song. It goes like this, and
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So there we have it, folks. Played in this most raw and tribal form by myself there, the D beat. It's been over 40 years since the punk band Discharge released their seminal first EP, Realities of War. Any punk rocker worth their salt already knows this, but for the more general music and drumming aficionado out there, I found through my teaching, masterclasses, doing seminars, etc., most are unaware that this is now not only a recognized musical style, but a very specific drum rhythm. Much in the same way, say, a samba is to Latin music or a one drop is to reggae. Here's a more recent example of me putting the very beat to good use with Sacrilege. Let's be clear on this. No one here is laying claim to inventing this rhythm, and it existed a long time before any punk band was putting it to good use, that's for sure. But for the sake of our subject matter, let's draw a line under its inception within punk and keep things simple. This can be placed fairly firmly in the hands of two drummers of the period for its prominence, namely John Marr of Buzzcocks and Tez Roberts of Discharge. It's historically accurate to say that John played it first as an intro to the Buzzcocks song You Tear Me Up, which came out in 1978. But it's really Discharge and Tez's drumming in particular which exemplifies the term and style. Probably because Buzzcocks only really used the rhythm twice in their whole early career, and it didn't typify their sound. Out of the 12 songs that Discharge released on their first 3 EPs, it appears in at least 9 of them. The band really did use it to full effect, conjuring up a new sounding style in the process that was considerably even more brutal, intense, and to the point than the punk that had preceded it. No small feat when you consider the impact that the first wave of punk bands had already had. I've decided to take the bull by the horns and speak to the two drummers in question. Firstly, Tez. Me and Tez have been friends for many years, but we've never spoken about drumming or the D beat. Now it's time for this to change. So, armed with my little video camera, I've decided to go and visit him and his dog Malk in Stoke and get the lowdown of where it all began. So, let's start at the beginning, Tez, of what we now know, or now we lovingly refer to the D beat. Tell us, for you, how did it all begin and where?
It began in Stoke-on-Trent in Hanley at the Naughty Action. It was like some hippie commune, like little foodie cafe get together place, but they had a back room where they would allow us to make a noise.
Yeah, make a noise. Had you played drums before?
No, I hadn't. No, the nearest I'd come to it was listening to Cozy Powell Dance with the Devil on the radio, or banging around with my mum's hairbrush.
So then you're on the kit, or you start on the kit, and so how did the beat come about? Can you remember?
Well, my favourite drummer right then was obviously Filthy Animal. I was just like, good, but I couldn't even begin to start with what he was doing.
No.
So my next best thing was Pete Davis out the UK Subs.
Yeah,
I was loving everything he did.
Yeah.
So I tried to combine the two together,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
got more Pete Davis than I got Filthy.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the rhythm itself, because I'm going to guess, you know, like you said, you know, when you started playing the drums, you hadn't been playing them that long.
Right.
Probably hadn't, you know, been thinking too long about kind of like things like independence and you know, and how to play. You were just trying to play ideas and trying to get them, you know, out, you know, like quickly, I suppose, like everybody is when they first start learning to play an instrument.
It had to be a certain, you know, a different tempo
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So no one was playing those outrageous speeds.
No. Yeah, because that's quite distinctive, isn't it? That you know, that the hand is following the foot.
Yeah.
You know, it gives it when you actually,
because it will push that pattern.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you start to play it, you know, like what you know is termed correctly. That's a different feel, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, once you start to play the quarter note pulse on the right hand.
Yeah, that's when
you know.
Yeah,
it smooths it out, I suppose, in a way, and that isn't always what you want, is it? I suppose that's another thing that
ferocity.
Yeah.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's what we. Well, that's what I delivered. You know.
Yeah. So that's how it all started for Tez. Now I needed to speak to John, but due to his rather remote location in the Outer Hebrides, which is where he now lives, there was no way I was going to be able to just drive over and see him. So, with the power of internet and Zoom, I was able to have a chat with him from right here in my own kitchen and get his story on how he came about this magical little beat.
And then the alternative, you know, when I was able to play a bit better.
Yeah.
Right, well, as I was explaining to you in the email, I mean, for me, it was that riff that Pete was playing, that and so that's that was the bass drum and snare drum. And in my head, I was thinking, well, the hi-hat, you sort of drilled into thinking the hi-hat has got to be this steady thing. And I could not do it. It's only since you contacted me about it and got me thinking, I then started thinking, well, maybe if that song hadn't appeared in the Buzzcocks catalogue until 2 years later, where I would have been able to go, would I have actually had the nerve, or would have something inside my head at that point be telling me was wrong? So in a way, I don't, whatever way it worked out, I think it worked out for the best. I mean, it was like I remember it was the very first time I ever played with them. I went round to Howard's basement flat, and it was just it was literally been thrown in at the deep end. We've got this song. It goes like this, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's what can you do? I didn't feel like sitting there and say, whoa, hang on a minute, hang on. I just had to like. I'll make something work. Otherwise, it'll look like I'm really shit.
You definitely weren't going to tell them that you needed to work out the hi-hat part.
That's right. Yeah. So it just resorted to doing the hi-hats, doing the same beats as the bass drum, and because it's the right foot for me and the right hand, it's easy to make the right hand do the same as the right foot. You know, I felt that the hi-hat just seems the obvious thing to do. For You Tear Me Up, I'm only talking about You Tear Me Up, of course, because that's the one song that I played it on.
Are you deliberately on the one opening the hi-hat? You're going,
well, I just find myself doing that kind of instinctively. I think it's, if I keep it shut, I guess it will sound different. This is the beauty of it, isn't it? All you have to do, we're playing, everyone's all talking about effectively the same rhythm. That's the basis of it.
We're all in agreement on that.
But I am a big fan of, and I'm not saying, I don't really overthink this, with the hi-hat, little things, little movements you do with your left foot, obviously do make a change to the sound of the hi-hat. Yeah. I think a little bit of open on the verse does give it that little extra something. And it's only just a little bit, you know, not a... but that's what I found the fantastic thing about drums. You just make a tiny little change to something and it can alter the feel.
So, we've established where it started for both drummers. Now I was keen to find out about the drums they were using back in the day and where they did the recordings too, with a rough time scale of when these took place. So yeah, so you know, so can you remember going back to the rhythm? What drum kit you were using at the time?
It was a Camco drum kit.
Yeah.
The snare wasn't Camco. I think the snare was a Premier snare.
Yeah.
And the shells were Camco.
Right. That's an unusual kit to have at the time.
Yes, I came across it from a store in Stoke-on-Trent by a friend of mine, Reg Banks.
Right.
I'm sure it cost me an arm and a leg. Yeah. But
it'd been an unusual kit to have at the time.
Yes,
definitely.
it was gorgeous and sounded.
Yeah.
From what I could tell.
And then where did you record? You know, like where did you record the Realities of War EP? Can you remember that? Or did you use the same studio generally then, or were you just going to different places wherever you could get?
Cheap.
Yeah.
That's the way. We was cheap.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like we had much money to play with.
No.
So we just go, you know.
Somewhere local in Stoke. Yeah.
I can't even remember what it was. Something 8 ball or something like that.
Yeah.
Something ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Tacky. Perfect.
Well, you know, we established where it was in Stoke. Was this all talking about 1980, or were you doing it, you know, before then?
No,
Did it all right sort of happen quite quickly
it was
once
all,
you jumped
it was
on the
all
kit?
80
Yeah,
basically, because I was singing in the late 70s until Acco left.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got on the kit, it just within a month or so we was recording.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
Yeah.
So what gear did you record it on in the studio, if you can remember? You know.
Right. Yeah. I remember. I mean, when I joined the band, the first time we ever played it, at that first rehearsal, I just had a real. Well, it was my first drum kit. It was a Sona. Got it second hand in a music shop in Manchester. Sona Swinger. Now that is the same kit that I used on Spiral Scratch. But of course, you Tear Me Up wasn't on Spiral Scratch. The first time we recorded You Tear Me Up was the very first time we ever went into a studio, and that was October '76. We went into a little 4-track studio in Stockport. It's called Revolution. It was up in the attic of this guy's house. Now, he actually had a drum kit set up. It was literally, I'm not joking, it was like an airing cupboard. It was an attic of a big old Victorian terraced house. And he cleverly crammed this drum kit into the airing cupboard. And he had, you know, presumably because he was so used to using that kit, he'd actually got quite a nice sound out of it. And I remember thinking when we turned up, wow, this kit is like, I can't tell you what the kit was. I don't know what it was, but I just thought, wow, it sounds so much better than my Sona, you know, because I always felt like I had a cheap piece of crap, really. Almost like you were a little bit embarrassed of it, but it did the job. So, and because I remember thinking, where the next time we went into a recording studio was when we went in to do Spiral Scratch, and that was the end of December. So it's 2 months later.
So that's not like the kind of like that Time's Up, you know, that's come out as the Time's Up.
No, the Time's Up. That what originally was released as a bootleg. That Time's Up record is actually all of the songs that we did in that attic studio from the first time we went into the studio.
Oh, it is. So that's from that session on that drum kit.
So that drum kit I'm playing on the Time's Up bootleg is the kit that the guy had already
in his house,
you know, wedged into his house. And I do remember actually asking and expecting or hoping that when we went to do Spiral Scratch, that I kind of got it in my head then that, all recording studios must have like a drum kit already in there. And that's what I was hoping, but disappointed to find out that they didn't, and I had to play my little Sona Swinger on
and
Spiral
that's what
Scratch.
you used on the Spiral Scratch.
On Spiral Scratch, yeah.
Okay,
But when we got to do, well, basically when we got signed by United Artists and did recorded all the singles and another music in a different kitchen. By that point, we had got money to buy some proper gear, and that the first kit that I used, the first professional type kit you might call it, was a Slingerland. It was a white Slingerland five piece, two toms on top and one.
On the picture of Singles Going Steady.
That's the one, because that picture on the cover of Singles Going Steady was actually taken during the Another Music sessions in Olympic Studios.
The rhythmic pattern like that, it obviously goes back further, doesn't it? You know, it's like, you know, you heard it somewhere, you know, it could have been, you know, like a cross between, you know, I'm sure that Phil the Animal was playing it on Motorhead songs. Pete Davis was playing the UK Serbs, John Mayer was playing it with Buzzcocks, but I've heard it like on Velvet Underground songs, you know, it's got a slightly Latin flavour, you know, like I said, it probably goes back, you know, to tribes in Africa, but, you know, really, I suppose, when we're referring to D-Beat, we're really referring to the fact that, you know, like there's the beats that you played and stylized, and the band stylized, you know, like a style of songwriting from that. They did those 3 records. They all came out quite quickly. You know, they were very consistent with it. So, you know, it was the blueprint, wasn't it, for that kind of style of riff, I suppose. You know. So that's my thoughts on it, anyway, Chase.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I knew it was a good idea doing this.
So there we have it, straight out the horse's mouth, so to speak. The 2 pioneers behind what is now not only an iconic drum beat, not just a musical style, but a musical force. So what's next? Well, how's about where we can take this rhythm? We already know where it started, but now it's time to see where we can take it to. This is Spike T. Smith signing off. Until next time.